I'm Angie Seaway. I live just minutes from East Devon's beautiful coastline here. I've travelled a lot in my little life, big life, and what I realised was nobody talks about the weather like British people. For British people, it's social cohesion, so it's hi, oh, a bit chilly out there, or oh my gosh, there's a storm coming, or did you see all that rain we had? So it's like a constant thread of our sort of cultural makeup as British people. And that's living, of course, on an island. When I travelled around, I realised that other cultures don't do it. I was in India for 4 weeks and nobody mentioned the weather. And one of my last days there, a little white cloud turned up and everyone was going, have you seen that cloud? So I always say I don't paint landscapes, I paint the weather. And I very much like painting out plein air, which is on the beach or on the top of the cliff in all weathers. And my practice then was very much about involving that raw energy that I was experiencing into the painting. I'd also use shale, shingle from the beach, throw that on. If it was raining, I'd use the rainwater on the canvas to work with the paint. And if I'm on the beach itself, then I will use the seawater and incorporate that into the painting. It waters down the paint, but then what you can do is you can sort of use that. So you can use the dribbles and the drips. It gets to a point where you just have to run and take the painting with you, because if it's a heavy shower, then there's no way you can continue. But if it's just sort of a little bit misty or drizzly or foggy, that works quite well. So what was this? Let's have a look.
Ange,
Hearts. I must have just met Ben.
Ange, look at that picture of the retina.
Landscapes as freedom. Right, this is 2018. I'm in Cornwall. Now I'm in Playa de la Cateria. So that sounds a bit Spanish to me. Palms in the breakfast court, memories of India. So I think this was Canary Islands. I think we went for a bit of winter sun. So you can be quite free in a sketchbook because it's not designed really to be ever seen, you know. It's... Oh, this is back in Cornwall. This is showing my age, really, because I wasn't allowed to do art at school. My dad was a very practical person, and I was very excited at the age of, I think I was about 12, the art teacher put up one of my landscapes in the art room. And I remember going home and being really excited about it, and him sitting sternly opposite me at the dinner table saying, don't get any ideas about doing art. So yes, rather sadly, I then had to do needlework and learn how to type. O-levels didn't have art. A-levels weren't allowed to be about art. And then when I went to college, I trained to be a teacher. I did a B.Ed. And even then, I couldn't do art then because I hadn't done any art previous. When I adopted my daughter, things were a bit rough for a long time, and I decided I needed one night off a week to go and do something different because I was a single parent as well. And I found this lovely lady called Judy Hempstead, who's sadly gone now, but she was a fantastic local painter, and she was running O-level GCSE art at the community college here in Exmouth. And I went along and I was quite nervous, and I explained that I hadn't done any art at all. And she gave me a paintbrush and she gave me some paints. And the minute I started painting, I just felt so blissful. It was like I was just so meant to do that. So I was in my early 30s then. My background is in teaching. I used to be a primary school teacher, and then I very clearly made a career decision to stop doing that because I wanted to paint more. And that worked brilliantly. And then I realised I was missing teaching. And I, particularly in the beginning, was missing teaching children because I taught 5-year-olds for such a long time, and I miss their lovely energy. So the very first thing I did was teach kids art here. So I did Saturday sessions in the studio, and then after a little while, someone said to me, well, why don't you do some adult classes? And I thought, oh, I don't know, maybe it's different teaching adults. Maybe I won't be able to do that. But sure enough, I loved it. And it is very different to teaching children, but the essential thing of trying to communicate clearly, demonstrate work, and show passion and compassion and encourage people is very much the same. And then someone said, I run a residential home for people with Alzheimer's and dementia. Will you come and do some art sessions there? So then I started doing that as well. And now I've just sort of slowly reined back into spending more time in the studio. Painting East Devon's Jurassic Coast is a project I started in lockdown. I decided I'd give myself 2 main challenges. One, that I would start in September, but I would finish 6 months later and not paint another stroke after that. And they'd all be plein air, and they would all start and begin during that period of the book, of the project. And they were all along Jurassic Coast. I think I ended up painting 28 paintings in the end. It was really lovely. I felt very supported. The counsellor, Nick Hookway, he wrote the foreword in the book. I met this wonderful guy called Daryl Bilverston. I met him at Open Studios, and we got chatting. He offered to do the drone photography. So then what happened was the structure of the book sort of organically developed, because it started with the date, the month rather, and then the weather forecast, notes from my sketchbook, and then me painting. So it was very much exploring the geology. I wouldn't normally be so specific about locations, but I was trying to just honour that stretch of the coastline. I always look when I get back at the forecast and what the forecast has been, and then I might slightly modify it to fit the painting better, or sometimes, I just go with exactly how it's written. Well, I had to start making them a bit more optimistic, because gallery owners were saying people really don't want to buy a painting that says it's going to rain a lot later. So things like brighter later, early fog may clear. Cold and bright, mild day for the time of year, misty start to the day. Just the odd break in the cloud. Though we live in a wonderful place, and it was nice to celebrate that, really. And of course, the timing of it was rather lovely, because there wasn't a lot of people around. I had a lot of very empty beaches to paint. Oh, it's bizarre. It creeps me out, and I'm the one that did it. Because I'll show you, if you like, what I'm crocheting in the other room, which has got a definite cell-like. Oh my God, this is weird. Skin showing nerve endings and sensory organs.
It is really like the stuff you're doing now.
I know.
Like, it literally looks like those.
I know, right?
That's strange.
No idea this was all in here either. Look, the journey into the interior landscape begins. Oh my God. Oh my God. The only people I'm painting are the inner landscapes, which is the new work. That's a whole different thing to talk about, really. But I mean, we can. But for some reason, I ended up in Zaragoza, which is a town in Spain, and that is the birthplace of a wonderful man called Cajal, Santiago Ramon Cajal. And he was the forefather of neuroscience. And he resonated with me because he really wanted to be an artist, and his father made him be a doctor. He started examining slices of brain, and he only had a microscope. And it was amazing because he painstakingly drew the most beautiful, exquisite drawings of what he could see through the microscope. And he describes the brain as a forest, terra incognita, this unknown territory where there are so many millions and billions of connectomes and neurons and axons and cell bodies that it's really difficult to kind of work out what's happening. But even though he didn't have all the medical advances we have today, he was so accurate in his drawings. And they are just beautiful. People I know who have neurodegenerative diseases, and also what happens when you have like a long-term issue like depression or PTSD. So I started going down the lines of, well, what would that look like? What would that feel like? What might it feel like to have Alzheimer's? Looked at how in your brain all the neural networks join and splinter and talk and communicate with each other.
So it's interesting because I'm drawing it and I'm thinking about drawing it and the shape and the line and the orientation of what I'm doing, but I'm also thinking of actually what it is I'm trying to represent. So these are all like those little tiny thoughts, so we'll just try to jump and make a connection. And I think I was drinking wine when I was making this initial painting. So I was thinking of, wouldn't it be wonderful if I had the superpowers of being able to draw peace, joining up these neurons. I think that's known as the God complex, isn't it? There's a contemporary British artist called Angela Palmer, and she went and paid for MRI scans of her body, and then she etched them onto sheets of glass. Oh my God. And made like a three-dimensional sculpture. Very often they'd say, "Mum, I can smell burning. Is the dinner ready?" And then I'd go, "Oh, sorry, I just got carried away." And then it would be a question of, how soon are they going to learn to cook? And they both did, which was great.
And so I use some of the techniques from my landscape painting, and I try to apply them to a sort of an art meets science kind of way of working. So they're not purely scientific, but they're not purely artistic either. They're sort of in this ground in between. And then I thought, what I really want to do, like I go out and paint plein air, is I want actual real medical imagery. I want real scans to paint from. So I put a shout out on Facebook page, and after a little while I ended up with 13 participants. And then for each of those 13 people, I've painted a version of their brain scan. I asked each participant to give me 3 colours that were significant to them. So it may be a loved one's hair colour, a favourite football team, or a flag colour. I've incorporated those 3 colours and just used those 3 colours in the painting. I was also thinking, well, how am I going to title these works? Because they're not weather forecasts now. So I asked each participant to give me a saying or a feeling or a sentence that would sum up what had happened to them and their journey. And that then became the title for each portrait. And then I was thinking, well, are they portraits? Or are they something else? And I'm still in this area of thinking, I like the idea that I could call them inner landscapes. So I'm plein air painting, and that's an outside landscape. And then I'm painting a brain scan of someone, and it's an actual person, and that's an inner landscape. And it kind of ties up my practice rather nicely, I think, across the two.
So this is called hydrocephalus. So what we would refer to perhaps as water on the brain. But it was very curable. They were able to put things into place to drain away the pressure and reduce the pressure on the brain. But I'm also just trying with these lines just to emphasize the fact that the pressure's being reduced. But importantly, it's being reduced from the centre, so I need to bring those into the outside. So purple, dark green and light blue are his colours. And they used to refer to it as Mr. Blue. And it was so called because they used to use these for painting the rigging when they were drawing and painting ships. Done a lot of it, I suppose.
I think as artists, we always wonder about a connection between our work and those that are receiving it. Over the years, you get throwaway comments directed at your work, like, oh, it wouldn't fit with my curtains or things like that. And I just kind of wanted to come in at a deeper level. And I thought, let's go deep. Let's really think about not only the trauma and vice versa, the healing that has gone on around this journey that they've been on, but also I love these big questions like, can I paint things that we can't see? Can I paint the unseen? Who are we? Everybody's brain is wired up differently. Everybody's neurons work differently. So it's like identity is quite, and we've talked about AI already this morning. Identity is a huge thing at the moment. So is it more authentic to paint someone's inner medical imagery? Is that a more authentic version of them? I like the fact that it's brought me together with people, and I haven't just been painting in an ivory tower. I've really enjoyed those connections, and I really like the fact that the art rises from that very honest interaction. I'd like to do things along those lines. I don't know quite yet where it's going to go. I find that I work in cycles, so I've just got to the end of that work, and then there's a private view here, and all the participants will come, and it'll be the first time they meet their portrait and the first time they meet each other. It's only when the paintings, they live with me, they're born here, they live with me, then they start moving on. It's only when they then start moving on that I then have space to do something else. So we'll see what the something else might be. I always, what I've said to the people with the brain images is my aim was to turn something, possibly horrendous into something beautiful. So that's what my purpose for that was. I wanted them to be heard, and I wanted it to be some sort of way of celebrating what they've been through and leaving them with something beautiful. That was my aim. You know, the classic is that people overwork it. So when the minute I like it, the minute I know that if I start fussing, it's going to change the energy, because it's about the energy. So it's easier to read then, because the minute it starts looking static, I really can't bear people that paint landscapes and the landscapes look static. And when I say landscape, I'm talking about the weather and the light and the clouds and the sea. You see, you're painting the sea. None of these things are static. So why would you try and paint them so they look static? And I think what happens, perhaps more with the more amateur painters, is that they overwork it, and that's when you start losing the movement. And that's what you need. That's what I'm all about. I want it to look like it's alive. God, the world just needs creative thinkers in every shape or form. Just do it. Yeah. You know, there are so many issues, aren't there, in the world? There's a lot of people that have more anxiety since COVID. There's a lot of people that struggle socially. You know, even if you never show anyone else anything you ever make art. Always make art, because it takes you into a wonderful, calm place in your brain, and it's really healthy. It's really healing, you know, and yeah, you got to do it. Got to do it. Do it.